Hello and welcome to Desert Island Who, a regular-ish Doctor Who podcast in which well-known faces from the Doctor Who world take their chosen 8 Doctor Who stories to a desert island. And as always, joining me, my co-host Conrad.
Hello.
And this week's guest, Tim.
Hello.
Now, before we get into your list, for those listeners who don't know, do you mind saying a little thing about what you do in Doctor Who world?
In Doctor Who world? When I'm not in Doctor Who world, I'm jack of all trades, master of none, really. I'm a teacher. I teach adults with special needs and I write songs and things like that. But I've just written a book on Doctor Who where I went through. It took me about 4 years, but I went through every episode and did a little review for each one. That's, and I've been a huge Who fan since I was about 8 or 9. I think the Sylvester McCoy years, which should give you an idea of how old I am. I basically wrote the book through an online publisher, Lulu. I don't know if you've heard of it. Where I just basically wrote loads of reviews and put them all together into a book form. And since then, I've just made a Facebook page for it, really, that I update pretty much every day with Doctor Who and other sort of science fiction related things.
That's very interesting. So the listeners can check that out then.
Yeah, what's the book called? For those of you who might want to check it out.
Yeah, it's on lulu.com and it's Doctor Who A Companion, it's called. So if you sort of go to Lulu and type Doctor Who, I think I'm about 4th down on the list or something like that. But failing that, have a look on Facebook under Timothy J. Lee, author. I've got a page on there.
Well, should we get into your list?
Yeah.
Now, your first choice is one which has been chosen before. I hadn't seen it when it was chosen before, but I have now since seen it. And it is the Aztecs.
I think I know about it.
You are a healer?
No, they call me the Doctor. I'm a scientist, an engineer. I'm a builder of things.
Now I understand your interest in the temple.
Yes, there are 1 or 2 features inside the temple that intrigue me.
It's a great character story, really. It really shows the strength of the Doctor, William Hartnell's Doctor, but also the companions as well. It's a great story for Barbara, for Ian, and for Susan, the 3 companions at the time. There's a lot of. It's quite a scary story at times, but it's also quite humorous as well. There's a bit where the first Doctor actually manages to propose to a tech woman without even realising it through making the way of proposing in that. So there's loads of little bits like that, just great to watch.
Yeah.
And the main sort of villain of the piece, I can never pronounce his name. I think it's Utoxel. He's a great sort of sinister pantomime sort of baddie as well. So it's just great, sort of Hartnell at his best, really.
Yeah, what I thought about this one was I was just glad it was 4 parts because because I was worried that it was going to be like a 6-part thing, like it could be quite dragged out, but it didn't feel dragged out at all because it was only 4 parts. And it sort of, I was worried because it's the only historical I've seen. I was a bit worried it might be a bit boring, but it did engage me. I sort of was interested.
I was surprised because I'm not as big a fan of the historical ones. So, but the Aztecs I thought had a lot to make it original and interesting.
So you think it's one of? How do you think it compares with the other historical ones of the Hartnell era? Do you think it sort of surpasses them? What do you think makes it like stand out as a particularly good historical that the others don't do?
Well, I think from a practical point, a lot of Hartnell ones, historical ones, are missing, aren't they, or reconstruction. So they are harder to get into, I think, as much as you try. Sort of thing. I'm just trying to think of the other ones. Really, there's the Crusade that's mostly missing, and there's Reign of Terror is mostly missing.
The Massacre.
Oh yeah, Massacre. Yeah, that's quite interesting at the end, I think, because it's that whole what's it called? Ethical dilemma, basically, of would he save the world in the breaking the laws of time to do so, and the argument he has with Steve, and all that's very interesting. But I think Aztecs, I think, like I said before, it's a real companion story as well. I think I've always really liked Barbara and Ian, and I think they really show their strength in that their character in that story.
So, your next choice is another William Hartnell story, one that you wouldn't really expect to be chosen because it's not really one that is spoken about as a classic, but it's The Rescue.
Oh, good gracious me. Oh, tell me I went off to sleep.
Yes, you did. Oh, at a very critical time.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love The Rescue. It's one of those that the more I watch it, the more I love it. I think it's one that on first viewing you can kind of discount a little bit because it is a two-part story and it's basically more about introducing the new companion. But I think it brings the best out of the companions, and it brings the best out of Hartnell, really. There's a lot of misunderstanding with Hartnell that people tend to think of him as, the grumpy old curmudgeon, but actually he changed such a lot in his 3 years. And I think The Rescue is one of those where he really shows like a more affectionate side, and shows more of a sort of grandfatherly side, especially after sort of losing Susan in the Dalek invasion of Earth beforehand. I think it's just a great character piece.
It's the first one where you sort of see a different TARDIS crew to the one we were introduced to in Unearthly Child, because you've got no Susan.
Yeah.
So it all makes for a different thing. I haven't seen this one, but I don't really know much about it. But I'm interested to see how different it will be to the rest of the early Hartnells.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say it's a very different one because, in a way, without spoiling anything, it doesn't really have a very conventional villain / monster. No,
it's quite a classic sort of murder mystery in a way, which is quite interesting as well. It's a bit different from a lot of the other Hartnells, I think, that one.
It's very contrast from the previous story, Dalek Invasion of Earth, which was very big and bolstery, and you had Daleks going across Trafalgar Square, and you had the Robo-Men, whereas this one's a much more compacted story. Is that why you chose it?
Yeah, I think it's one that you can really, like I say, it rewards repeat viewings. I think it's one of those that you can come back to again and again. I think the Dalek Invasion of Earth is an amazing story, and it's really epic, and there's so many iconic scenes, like you said, the Daleks coming over London Bridge and things like that. But I just really like The Rescue. I think because again it gives the characters something to really sink their teeth into, and it's one of my favourite TARDIS teams. Actually, it's not one that's often talked about. Barbara and Ian and Vicky. I like Susan a lot, but I think there's a real charm to Vicky that in the few stories that she's in. I think she really brings like the best out of Hartnell again, it's an interesting story. I think it helps being two parts as well. It's easy to watch.
Sort of shorter one. I think Vicky gets overlooked because you've got obviously Susan, Doctor's granddaughter, so you focus on that aspect, and also quite a few of the Vicky ones are missing. There are quite a few that exist, but there are missing ones as well. Yeah, which means she's not as well represented in the archives as a lot of companions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt a bit sorry for Susan in a way because she starts off a really, really interesting character, And then it was almost as if they didn't really know what to do with her after the first season, and she didn't always get as good lines as she should have done. She was quite a strong character to begin with, in The Unearthly Child, and things like the censor rights. She was really pivotal in that story as well, with being able to read minds and things like that. But she kind of went a bit off the boil after that, and I can kind of understand why Caroline Ford left after was it series 2 or whatever. Because she didn't get as many good lines after that, I don't think, after that first season. So it was nice to have a strong character like Vicky coming in, who was maybe a bit more interesting than Susan had been at the end.
Your next choice is one of my personal favourite stories, featuring my favourite Doctor, and it is one that didn't exist in the archives for a long time, and it's Tomb of the Cybermen.
Do you understand me? Now that I have released you... Let me go! I set you free! It was our plan! You belong to us. You shall be like us.
Oh yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
What do you find so good about Tomb of the Cybermen? What draws you to that one?
It's it's a fantastic story. It's a great story to show as like a first one to show to anyone who hasn't seen a classic story before. And it's probably, I think it was the first black and white Doctor Who story that I ever saw. And yeah, it's just great. It's got a really interesting enemy. Of course, the Cybermen themselves are just brilliant in it. They're just they work. I think both the Daleks and the Cybermen work really well in black and white because they've got that kind of chrome look to them, and when they break out of those sort of the tombs, it's just a fantastic moment really in Who that. There's a great sort of supporting cast as well. The Doctor's on great form. I think it's probably the best that Victoria is in that story as well. There's that great scene where she's talking about where he's talking about grief and how to deal with grief after losing her father in the is it the Evil of the Daleks or the Power of the Daleks? I always get those two mixed up. Evil of the Daleks. And yeah, it's just a great serial, really great fun one to watch from beginning to end.
And like you said about the thing where the Doctor talks to Victoria,
yeah,
it's sort of one of the first times to see the Doctor open up and sort of mention his family. You wouldn't ever have got something like that with Hartnell.
Yeah,
really. Obviously, Susan was his family, but actually talk about like people from his home.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
The Doctor was a big mystery at this point, even into Troughton.
Yeah.
Didn't know much about.
Well, up until the War Games, really, we didn't know where he was from or who his people were or anything like that. So yeah, it was still quite mysterious. So it's not. It must have been really exciting at the time to have little snippets like that of, to know a little bit more about him.
Yeah. What do you think about this? Is something that is levelled against certain classic stories. What do you think of the possible, though not intentional, racism with Toberman?
Oh God, interesting question. What do I think of it? I mean, obviously, it's not dated well, that sort of thing. It's a double-edged sword, really, because on one hand, it's great. It was great at the time to see people from different ethnic backgrounds in science fiction, like Star Trek was doing it, and it was quite a positive thing to have different sorts of people on television, because up until that point it was very much a BBC thing of white middle class males, only sort of thing. So from that point of view, it was quite a good thing. But yeah, he is quite a one-dimensional character and a bit. It doesn't really represent people very well, I don't think, that character. No. But in the end, he's the one who saves the day, isn't he? Yeah. He's the most heroic of the lot in the end. So, What do you think?
Oh well, I don't think it was intentional because he was originally meant to have a hearing aid in, and the reason that he was sort of like didn't speak as much is because it was more to do with some affliction of the brain or something, and that was cut out. But I guess that again, like you say, it's more a product of its time and sort of like cutting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't get anything like that nowadays. But I mean, in the 60s, I mean, there was a lot of shows that were a lot more racist. So
Yeah.
Doctor Who
So
got
in
off
some
comparatively
ways-
lightly.
Yeah.
Racist episodes. So,
Yeah, I mean-
a few
That actor actually came back, didn't he? And was it Terror of the Autons where he had not that character, sorry, the actor. But I think he was a pretty one-dimensional character then as well. I don't think they gave him anything better, even in the Pertwee times. So,
Actually, speaking of Terror of the Autons, that's your next choice.
oh, that led into that quite nicely, didn't it?
Yeah.
You don't appreciate its full potential, do
And
you?
I don't want to. It doesn't meet our specification.
This plastic has got unique properties, Mr. McDermott. Allow me to demonstrate.
Right, what do I love about Terror of the Autons? I think, again, loads of great things. I love Delgado's master. I think he's a brilliant. He's such a sort of James Bond bad guy, sort of stroke with Moriarty. He's just got that great sort of sinister presence about him, which is interesting considering like everyone you hear in interviews says what a lovely guy he was and everything. So, but he definitely acted sinister very well, I thought. So you've got him. You've got the some of the most ridiculous deaths in any serial. I think that being killed by a plastic chair is just brilliant. And the quite creepy synth music in it as well. It's just great behind the sofa type Doctor Who. I think for the early 70s, that one.
It was, at the time, it was very controversial, obviously, because some of the scenes were, the strangulation and all the plastic coming alive was seen as too violent for children.
Yeah, I think it was because they had the doll, didn't they, that came to life, and I think there were a lot of complaints about from parents saying that their kids wouldn't go to bed at night because they were worried their teddy bears were going to attack them and things like that. And I think there were some complaints from the police, either of that one, or was it that one, or was it Spearhead in Space, where they've got the policeman driving the car and then they pull his mask off and he's an Automan.
Yeah, it's that one.
Is it that one? Yeah. So I think there was complaints there from the police saying that it was it was scaring the public against them as well. So, but yeah, I mean the ratings shot through the roof as a result, and Doctor Who's kind of capitalised a bit on that ever since, really.
Yeah, it sort of has taken the horror element, following on from here into the Tom Baker element, and made it quite a big part of the show. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, it always has been. I think even in the Hartnell days, there was some scary moments and things. I'm trying to think of one now. But yeah, there definitely were, and Troughton. But yeah, it did go towards more of an adult audience, I think, with Pertwee and Tom Baker. So I think they kept trying to push that edge a little bit. So they did get complaints, I think, at the time. But yeah, I think Terror of the Autons is one of those where it works really well. It's not kind of gratuitous or whatever. It's just a great fun serial as well, with a great bad guy, really original ideas. It's a good one, that one.
And because it's Doctor Who's finding his feet on Earth, because it's one of the earliest stories in Pertwee's when we've been stranded on Earth. So it's bringing the aliens home to where the viewers are. Yeah.
And it's, I think it's a lot snappier as well than that first Pertwee season. I sometimes struggle a bit with, where they've got the is it 7 episodes or something long, and they're a lot more dry, I think, those, and I find Pertwee quite tricky when he's being very stern and sort of putting his assistant down and things like that. But he does kind of soften a little bit, and I think giving him someone like the Master to bounce off really it really worked for him, I think. I mean, I've heard people say that the reason why Anthony Ainley's Master didn't work as well was because you kind of need the Master to be like a mirror image of the Doctor, and I think Delgado works really well as a mirror against John Pertwee. And like later on, I think John Sim works really well against David Tennant because he's like a mirror image of him almost. But Anthony Ainley was a lot more. Well, for me, I mean, he was fun to watch, but he didn't have that same sinister edge that Delgado had. He was much more of a sort of pantomime villain, I think. The way he played.
Now, your next choice is one that is seen as one of the best Doctor stories.
Yeah.
It's one of the early ones on Tom Baker. In fact, it's only his second story, and it's on his face.
Homo sapiens. What an inventive, invincible species. It's only a few million years since they crawled up out of the mud and learned to walk. Puny, defenseless bipeds. They've survived flood, famine, and plague. They've survived cosmic wars and holocausts. Now, here they are, out among the stars, waiting to begin a new life, ready to outsit eternity. They're indomitable. Indomitable.
Yeah. Quite a popular choice, this one. It's a great story. I mean, I think the only thing that sort of lets this down a little bit is the bubble wrap alien, but for 72, it's not bad. And if you look at the sets as well, like the set when he's doing his famous Homo sapien speech, that's a fantastic set. I mean, that could be straight out of Scott Ripley or whatever. Obviously, a lot earlier than that as well, so it must have been quite influential, I think. But no, it's a great idea. The idea that there's humans it's the last humans all being cryogenically frozen, and there's a parasite on board and all the rest of it. Just makes for a great kind of like a classic sort of base under siege story that that harks back to Troughton a bit as well. And another fantastic TARDIS team as well. I think Harry is again another very underrated companion. I think they work really well together, those three, with Sarah Jane and Tom Baker. It's just a really winning combination, I think, those three. Trying to think what else to say really. What do you like? What do you like about the Ark in Space? I'm guessing you both like that one.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I sort of like how it's. Even though it's Tom Baker's second story, he's already so in control of everything. Yeah. And I think the whole setting as well. It's a sort of because there's no escape or anything. Yeah. Really.
That's a great story, I think, doesn't it? When you've got. Yeah, definitely. I think I wrote about this in my book, but it's bizarre with Tom Baker. He's one of the few Doctors that I can think of that just owns that part, like almost immediately. Like within like 2 scenes of Robot, his first story, he is the Doctor, and you've forgotten about. I mean, as much as Pertwee's amazing, he's just Tom Baker. He's almost like he was born to play the role. It's almost like he's not acting sometimes. He just has that natural eccentricity, and it comes out really well. In it, I think one of the things I love about him is whereas John Pertwee would do all these kind of rambling things at somebody, which could come across as quite aloof and a bit sort of arrogant and all the rest of it. Tom Baker sort of does it to himself, so he'll sort of go off screen and sort of do this kind of mumbling thing where he describes the whole plot in very complicated terms. But because he's doing it to himself, it kind of adds to his eccentricity and it makes him even more interesting and odd.
Yeah.
So Ark in Space is also interesting sort of the start, sort of a story arc in space, because you've sort of got a continuous adventure really from Robot, and then from you've got the Nerva beacon, which obviously returns, Revenge of the Cybermen.
Yeah.
So it sort of gives a continuity.
Yeah, that season's fantastic. It's probably the best season, I think, personally. As a full season, I think it's probably the most consistently good. I mean, and yeah, I really like the arc in that one. It doesn't kind of overplay that too much. It doesn't make the whole, thing about that. But it's nice that it follows on. When they go down from there to the sort of what they thought would be a decimated Earth with the Sontaran experiment, and then like you say, back to Revenge of the Cybermen in the same setting, but like centuries later or whenever it is. It's a nice season to follow, that one.
Yeah, it feels very like modern Doctor Who in the way that it follows this sort of linking plot line from the first story, Robot, through this one, and then through all the others. It sort of feels more connected in a way that perhaps some of the other stories in previous seasons didn't.
Yeah, they're a bit more standalone, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it does work well like that, and like I said, really good team on board as well. I think Harry works really well with Sarah Jane, and their personality clashes and things. It's good.
Now, your next choice is another one which people would say was a great Doctor and companion relationship, sort of a different kind of Doctor and companion relationship is shown in this story, and it's one with Sylvester McCoy and Ace, and it's The Curse of Fenric.
Well, Professor, what's this water doing?
Oh, it's the roof. It leaks. It always seeps in like that when it's raining and there's an east wind.
The problem is, it's not raining. There's a west wind.
Yeah, I mean, as I was saying at the beginning, this is the Doctor that I first knew when I was a young kid, and it was interesting going back and revisiting them to see just how bad that first season is, because I think you don't realise that when you're watching as a kid. You think it's all amazing, but he was very much my Doctor, and I do have a very soft spot for Sylvester. But I think when he met Ace, who is quite a troubled soul, isn't she, really? I think that really brought the best out of him, made him much more of a had that father paternal kind of relationship with her. And that second season is just great. It's really good, and it really sort of culminates with Curse of Fenric. There's that sort of awful bit at the end where after she finally learned to trust someone again after all these years of being quite troubled. He has to convince her that she shouldn't trust in him, which is it's just heartbreaking, that bit, and it's done so well. I mean, you can tell, I think like Liz Sladen and Tom Baker, you can tell that Sophie Aldred and Sylvester McCoy are good friends outside of the programme, and they've continued to be friends since as well. And it really comes across in scenes like that one. But it's not just about that. It's also a great story. It's got some fun ideas that sort of weaving in the history with the alien thing that works well sometimes. And I love the hemovores, the sort of vampires coming out of the seas, a fantastic sort of harking back to the Sea Devils or whatever. But no, I'm really glad that Sylvester got some top-notch stories in that last season, because I felt the first season really let him down, so it was nice for him to go off with a bang, really. And I love that one. It's probably my favourite, sometimes joint favourite with Remembrance, which is also a great story as well.
One of the things about this story is you've got the sort of an ancient enemy of the Doctor's in Fenric, who we haven't seen before, but it sort of has off-screen of off-screen history.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite
for an interesting villain.
Yeah, it's quite fun when they do that. They did that in Face of Evil as well, where they and Time Lash, which I was watching today. They're both sort of ones where it's said that he's revisiting, but you never sort of saw when he visited the first time. I think it's interesting in Face of Evil as well, because you can see that the sort of the echoes and the footprints that the Doctor leaves behind, even by trying to help, sometimes it can actually do more harm than good at times, because he was trying to, in that particular one, I don't know if you've seen it, it's great one, that one. He was trying to help a computer to basically evolve or whatever, and when he went away, it kind of evolved to sort of near God proportions and took on the Doctor's identity. So when he comes back to that society, they all see the Doctor and think he's evil, and there's that great sort of comedy line where he meets Leela for the first time and offers her a jelly baby, and she says, so it's true that the evil one eats babies. So it's it's just one of those great sort of comedy Baker moments. I've forgotten the question. I've waffled on, I can't remember. Fenric. It's interesting to see, to hear of all the stories that have been happening while we've not been watching. It does that a lot in Matt Smith, doesn't it, as well?
Yeah.
He has a lot of those.
Goes off and has a sort of a tie-in novel adventure, or...
Yeah, wasn't it like 100 years or something he was off, and then he came back in The Impossible Astronaut?
Yeah, just 100 years wandering around.
Yeah.
This one is a bit similar to Ark in the fact that both seasons that they come from have a, as you mentioned before, a plot link.
Yeah.
Like an overall plot arc.
Yeah, I don't understand the Sylvester one quite as much. You guys can probably enlighten me a bit. It's the what's he called? The guy that was
Cartmel Master Plan.
The Cartmel Master Plan. Yeah, wasn't it something about the Doctor being more than we realised? More, like one of the maybe as being back there when Omega was there or something. I can't remember what it was, but there's some sort of thing that wasn't actually revealed. I don't think it was revealed, was it? There's a lot about chessboards and things. Got a bit complicated at that point.
Trying to bring mystery back into the Doctor, because it's something that we were saying earlier with, in Holtner and early Troughton. There definitely was some mystery there, and who's the Doctor? We don't know who he is, and that's something that was missing for a while.
Yeah. No, I think it worked well for that, didn't it, really, putting the mystery back in. And it's a shame it kind of was cancelled when it was, because it was really starting to turn itself around at that point. It had been pretty bad, I think, in the mid to late 80s, but that's my personal opinion. A lot of people love that era. But I think that last season, I think, really turns it back, and it's a shame it had lost so many fans at that point, because I think had people seen how good things like Remembrance of the Daleks and Curse of Fenric were, I think it might have survived a bit longer. But then, there's an argument to say if it hadn't have gone away, it wouldn't have come back as strongly as it had. So,
So this series sort of seen as a bit of sort of building up some things that were seen in the new series, as I've mentioned before on the podcast. And with this story, it's even more obvious, really, because despite the God Complex being a story I like, they reuse a lot of elements from the Curse of Fenric, with the sort of faith being to ward off the enemy, and the Doctor having to break his companion's faith in him. I mean, that is straight lift from Curse of Fenric, and I didn't really realise that until I haven't seen Curse of Fenric in a while.
Did you see God Complex first then?
I saw Curse of Fenric first, but I hadn't seen it in a while.
Oh, okay.
Complex, but looking back, you can tell that it's sort of makes the God Complex go down in my estimation, really, because it is quite a bit of a copy.
Yeah. Or tribute, maybe. Probably so. You definitely see more when you go back and watch it again. I think that was one of the things I loved about making this book, really, was giving me an excuse to really go back and watch a lot of the shows that I'd not seen, either never seen or only seen once. So, and give them another go.
Your next choice, you skip Paul McGann. He's had no love so far. You also missed Eccleston, the 9th Doctor, and instead you went to the 10th Doctor and a story in his 3rd season, which was, interestingly enough, based on a novel which originally featured the 7th Doctor.
It was, yes, 10 points.
Human Nature / The Family of Blood.
Yeah.
Quite remarkable tales. I keep imagining that I'm someone else and that I'm hiding.
Hiding? In what way?
But almost every night, this is going to sound silly.
Tell me.
I dream quite often that I have 2 hearts.
Well, then I can be the judge of that. Let's find out.
I feel bad now for not picking an Eccleston, because I really like Eccleston. And he had some fantastic stories as well. Things like Father's Day is amazing. The Empty Child's amazing. Parting of the Ways is amazing. There's so many great Eccleston ones in such a short time as well. So he definitely... but unfortunately, as it had to be down to just 8, it was difficult. But yeah, again, I've picked quite a soppy one. Human Nature. Again, I think it's fantastic. It's fascinating because you see the Doctor becoming human. And actually, talking about Father's Day as well, when Eccleston was talking about how the Doctor envies how normal and everyday human life is, because we don't tend to think of the Doctor's life, because the Doctor, we tend to think of having this amazingly exciting life, but he never gets to kind of settle in any one place. And I think he got that chance in Human Nature, to fall in love and to have a sort of normal life. So it's, again, just heartbreaking when that all falls apart at the end, and he has to leave. I can't remember her name. The woman from Space.
Jo.
Yeah, she's very good in it. But yeah, and also some fun bad guys. The Scarecrows are just a great sort of Doctor Who villain. You can just imagine kids, darting behind the sofa again. It's very John Pertwee era or Troughton era, that kind of zombie scarecrows. It's brilliant. But yeah, it's just really well written, and I liked the sort of First World War connections in it. And yeah, it's I'm trying to think what else I love about it. It's just a great double part of that one. What do you like about it?
Well, I to be honest, I agree with you completely. It really shows a different side to the Doctor that we don't normally see. Like, what would he be like as a human? What would he be like settling down and having a family and all these sort of things? And it also shows how tragic, in a way, the Doctor's life is, because he can't really ever settle down in one place or have a family again, because he has to constantly be on the move, on the run, saving planets and things.
Yeah, I think I think you take different things from the show when you're obviously an adult like ourselves than you do as a kid. I think you tend to find. I think that's one of the reasons why Doctor Who is such a long-lasting and great show, because it works on so many levels. And you've got the zombie scarecrows that kids will love, but you've also got like a lot more depth to the story in stories like this as well. That that's what makes it a family show. I think there's something for everyone in the family, really. And I think at his best, I think the Doctor represents all those elements of the family. I think he's got that sort of the stern authoritarian sort of parent role, but he's also got the, excitable kid, the curious nature and all that sort of thing. So I think there's something that everyone can relate to in that show. Yeah, and that character.
Not only is the Doctor not there for most of it, but also even when he is the Doctor again, he's very different, what with the retribution and punishment.
Extremely dark in the end of that one, isn't he?
Yeah.
Because the family of blood aren't even the most evil people that the Doctor comes across in this. I mean, they're bad, but they're not the most. And it's interesting that the 10th Doctor becomes human, because he's sort of one of the most human, even when he's the Doctor.
Yeah, he suffers a little bit from, well, if you see it as suffering, but to me he suffers a little bit from the same thing as Davison, in that he's, very charming and very affable and very likeable, but sometimes lacks that sort of alien quality that people like Tom Baker and most of the other Doctors have that real sort of eccentric alien thing going, whereas Tennant does have it and Davison does have it, but maybe not as much, and they do come across as more I'm trying to think of a word that's not insulting, because I was going to say generic, but they're not generic at all. They're very talented actors and really interesting Doctors, but do you know what I mean? They've got more of a traditional hero role as opposed to the eccentric alien of Tom Baker, say, or even McCoy or someone like that. But I think sometimes the way the Doctor is played is sometimes done in opposition to the Doctor that came before. So I think the fact that Tennant is kind of like that in a way, because Eccleston was so what's the word? Kind of the opposite of that, wasn't he? He was very tough, whereas so Tennant comes across as much more accessible, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah.
But then I think the reason why Tennant works so well and is such a long-standing Doctor is because he had those different sides. So he had that very lovable, charming persona, but then, like at the end of this story, he could flip the switch and become incredibly dark. There's not many Doctors that would have done that to the aliens. To really, yeah, it's pretty dark at the end of that one. Quite dark all the way through, actually, in some parts.
Yeah.
And your final choice is another one with dark themes, about a dark subject matter. It's Vincent and the Doctor.
And then shining, burning, bursting through the stars. Can you see how they roll their light? Everywhere we look.
Yeah. It's quite interesting actually looking at these back as to why I picked on. There's definitely ones that are very that have a lot of deep, they're very character driven and all the rest of it. I mean, I do like some of the ones that are much more daft and all the rest of it, and or throwaway or whatever. But I think these ones just stay in my mind more, because when you're watching them, they stick with you emotionally, I guess. Vincent and the Doctor is definitely an example of that. I hold my hand up and say that when Matt Smith first started, it took me a long time to to gel with his Doctor. I thought he was a bit of a hipster, a bit of a kind of too cool for school sort of thing when he first started. I'm really glad to be proven wrong, and I think it's serials like this that made me realise how wrong I was, because he's just brilliant in this, and he has such a sort of range as an actor that he shows in stories like this. And interestingly enough, his first one, the first, which I've completely forgot the name of, The 11th Hour. It wasn't until I went back and watched that again that I realised what an amazing story that is. It's so sort of timeless. It's like a folktale. It's like he plays like a Rumpelstiltskin type character in that. He's just really enigmatic and interesting straight away. And again, just like Tom Baker, he pretty much owns that character within the first few scenes of playing it. But it wasn't really until Vincent and the Doctor that I saw how interesting that Doctor could be, and also how interesting that series could be, because to take on something like mental illness and manic depression in what is basically a kid's show is just really a really brave thing to do, and they didn't dumb it down. They didn't sort of make it pop psychology. They did it in a really interesting way and through a really interesting character of I don't know the name of the guy who played Vincent van Gogh in it, but he was fun. He was such a he's just brilliant in that. He doesn't overplay it. He doesn't make it into it's just really well written and really well acted all the way. And you can't ask for better than that in any drama. And I like the whole metaphor that he saw off a monster, but then like the bigger monster of his mental illness is what sort of in the end got him, sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's also interesting from Amy's point of view. I saw it as a bit of a standalone one at the time, but it's interesting going back and watching it because she'd just forgotten about Rory, hadn't she? She'd just been taken out of existence at the time. I think it was the first time he died, wasn't it? It's interesting to see her relationship with him as well. Just a great, really well written, really well acted story. That just another one that gets better every time you watch it as well.
It is a very poignant story, like your other choices, like Human Nature and Family Blood and The Curse of Fenric. They're all very sort of very emotional stories. They very much touch on the audience's collective emotions.
Yeah,
that's sort of like, but each dealing with a different emotion.
I think that's one of the things that's great about Doctor Who, because it is. He's not a hero. He's not the sort of traditional hero that uses his fists or swords. Well, I mean, he does sword fighting some, but do you know what I mean? That's not his main. His main weapon of choice is his intellect, and it is a thinking program. It is, it does encourage you to think and also to sort of think about your way of looking at the world as well. I think Doctor Who's always done that. It's. I mean, the Doctor in so many stories goes into quite an oppressive regime or people who are being oppressed and tries to liberate them. That's kind of his raison d'etre, really, a lot of the time. So, and I like the way that he sometimes as well. He makes you realise that. About the difference, that we look at difference in a bad way, and it's not always a bad thing. He sometimes even opts on the side of the alien over the human. Sometimes it doesn't happen very often, but it doesn't. It's a very much a thinking man's or thinking woman's program. I think Doctor Who, and it's a good thing for that.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not a massive fan of this particular story.
Vincent
the Doctor, no.
Okay, interesting.
I just didn't find it very interesting. It didn't really engage me. I thought it was a little boring, to be honest, for a lot of it.
Okay.
And I thought the monster was a bit like pointless, because they're trying to do it about his mental illness. That's supposed to be a sort of a metaphor for it's an invisible monster, his mental illness. But it was a bit obvious for me that the metaphor and the actual they didn't use the monster at all in the episode, really. So
it probably would have worked just as well without the monster, I think, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Might work better.
Yeah, in some ways it was a bit of a distraction. I don't think that's definitely not my favourite part of this one, the monster. I think it's just much more interesting as a character-driven one. I think sometimes they are a bit reluctant to do just a history one on its own. And I think this one would have worked as just a history one.
Yeah.
There's a few like that. I think Hyde is another one that's a bit like that, where it's working really well as a story all the way throughout, as just like a ghost story, like a classic sort of whodunit type thing, and then it just kind of goes mad at the end, and they decide, oh, it's an alien from another, and it's almost like they weren't committed enough to see that story out. They had to throw in another, and I think there's a lot of that in Series 7, the first part of Series 7, where it's almost like a pick and mix of ideas that they just kind of throw together, and all of the individual parts would make great stories, but you throw it all together and it's a bit of a bit of a mess sometimes. I've gone off the question again. But no, going back to what Conrad said before, I think that's one of the best things about Doctor Who as well, is that there's so many different sorts of stories that there really is no fan that agrees on what's a great story and what's not a great story, and I think that's a good thing. There's certain stories that so many people say, oh, it's an amazing story, it's the best story ever, and I watch it and I'm not a fan, you know. I'm just watching, because I'm kind of working through the Doctors each month at the moment, so as we're on the 6th month, I'm watching Colin Baker, and I'm just about to get to Revelation of the Daleks, and so many people say that's an amazing story, and when I first watched it, I just thought it was the most cringeworthy, like really bad, you know, like with Alexei Sale doing the DJ, and the Doctor being really like arsey with his companion all the time. And
Revelation is that the Doctor is pointless. If he didn't show up, it wouldn't make any difference to the plot.
Right. I mean, Davros is great in it. Davros is good in it. But what I mean is there's no fan agrees on what is, and hopefully my list sort of reflects that a bit. There are a few in there that, you know, most fans would say are classics, like your Tomb of the Cybermen, Curse of Fenric, things like that. But there's also stuff in there that are just kind of personal favourites that not everyone would like. So, you know, The Rescue and looking at my list now. They're all fairly classic, I guess.
Yeah.
The Rescue's a bit of a wild card entry in there. But yeah, I like the fact that not everybody agrees. I think people get a bit too, because they love the show so much, I understand that, but they can be a little bit harsh on each other when everybody doesn't agree on what episodes.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's one of the things I think, I mean, it's a bad analogy, but I'm also a big David Bowie fan, and every David Bowie album is totally different from the other.
Yeah.
And you'll never find a David Bowie fan that agrees on what is the best album, which is the worst. And it's exactly the same with Doctor Who. Pretty much every story has a different director, different writer. So one of the fun things about Doctor Who is you're never quite sure what you're going to get. So you might watch the most terrible one you've ever seen, and then the next one you watch, you know, in chronological order, is one of the best you've ever seen.
Well, it's like because it's like Kaiser and Dazani and Twin Dilemma being consecutive stories. It's that
Yes.
thing, isn't it?
Yeah, quite. Yeah, exactly. That's a very good example, actually. Yeah, I've just been watching those, but I'm looking forward to getting into July so I can get back to my first Doctor, which was Sylvester. So
It's going to be a pretty empty August, though.
Yeah, well, I might do a bit of a John Hurt, you know, watch a few John Hurt films, you know, to.
Yeah.
What do you think about that whole sort of the War Doctor thing?
I don't mind it. I think he was good in the Doctor.
I think it was Moffat's way of trying to wind the fans up a little bit.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I quite like him for that sometimes, because we do take. I mean, I would be the first to put my hand up and say I take the show far too seriously. I kind of hope there's more War Doctor stuff, because I thought it was great.
There's the War Doctor novel coming out.
Oh right, cool. Has that come out already? Or?
I think it's coming out soon. I don't know. The John War Doctor book is called Engines of War. It's out at the end of July, and on the front cover is a picture of a new series, Special Weapons Dalek.
Okay. Oh, that'd be because we didn't really get a chance to see that much in Asylum of the Daleks. I was really looking forward to seeing that. With Remembrance of the Daleks being one of my favourite serials. But yeah, I think it was just like a snapshot, wasn't it? But yeah, he's awesome, that Special Weapons Dalek.
Well, referring to the Special Weapons Dalek, that quite nicely goes on to your book. Well, it's not a book, but it's not a book. It's the 25th anniversary special souvenir issue.
Yes, that's definitely the one I would take with me. It's I mean, back when I was a kid and I was getting into the show with Sylvester McCoy, you couldn't really get the videos, or obviously there wasn't the internet and things like that. So it was very difficult to find out any more about the show other than the episodes that were on. And I was very lucky for, I think it was for my birthday, my folks got me the 25th anniversary Marvel souvenir issue. And it was just like the Holy Grail, because for the first time I saw all these other Doctors. And for many years, that's all I saw of them. Like a couple of pictures of Hartnell was my only reference. There was one with Pertwee kung fu kicking an alien or something like that. And it was just like it really helped me get into the show as a whole, as opposed to just those half an hour shows that I saw every whenever it was, Saturday, or I think it moved at that point to Monday or something. But yeah, it was it's a great fun sort of souvenir issue, really. I've managed to find a few years back in my loft, so it definitely takes pride of place now.
Yeah.
And your other choice is related to
unusual.
It's related to your first Doctor, and it is the one you grew up watching, and it's Sylvester McCoy's jumper.
Yeah, I noticed you can get these. You can get these on Amazon now. They're about 15 quid or something. I'm not. I can't rationalise buying one myself on a teacher's wage, but it's a very divisive garment. I think it's a bit ridiculous for the Doctor to be wearing a jumper with loads of question marks on. I have to agree, but I don't know. It's just a bit of fun. I think I think if I was stuck on a desert island as well, it might get a bit cold at night. So, could always keep me warm, put a Sylvester jumper on if I didn't have a Tom Baker scar. But no, it's just a bit of it's a fun, crazy, wacky kind of thing, which kind of suits Sylvester's Doctor, I think, at times. Although I did like his darker, jacket and stuff when in the second season. Was always a big fan of his question mark and band as well. It's definite contradiction going on in my head, I think, because I think I get really wound up in Doctor Who when they do really stupid, daft things like have question mark jumpers. But at the same part, I think there's just the kid in me that loves that as well, So
is it the continuum for 1990? I think I saw an interview and McCoy said he would demand to get rid of the jumper. Because he said that would be enough.
Well, yeah, it's a bit daft. I mean, one of the ways I've kind of reassured myself in my head, I'm quite like, how they went back and said that the term Doctor actually came from the Doctor.
Yeah.
In the Matt Smith one, wasn't there? I can't remember. It's Good Man Goes to War or something like that. One of those big Matt Smith ones. It'd be kind of cool if they sort of in a further series worked out that the question mark was like some species symbol for the Doctor, and he could kind of claim it back that way, couldn't he? Make it more more I can imagine Moffat doing that as well. He likes to tie in these things.
Yeah, that would be great, wouldn't it?
But until then, it's just a daft jumper, I think.
I suppose you could always use it to collect coconuts and such on the desert island.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah. Well, I think that sort of wraps it up, doesn't it?
Yeah,
well, that's been all right. Like I said before, I'm not used to doing this sort of thing, but I hope it's been fun talking to you both.
Yeah, it has. It's been great, hasn't it?
Yeah. So thank you everyone for listening, and follow us on Twitter at Desert Island 2. So you can find Tim on Lulu and Facebook, and Desert Island Who's also on Facebook. So thank you for listening.